It's time to take a ride on the Steelers Afternoon Drive with our co-hosts, Alan Saunders and Zachary Smith.
Welcome into an episode of Steelers Afternoon Drive. I'm Zachary Smith, Alan Saunders, back after the weekend on a Monday. How we feeling?
Feeling all right. I'm feeling all right. I got the big news of the day out of the way. The Steelers signed wide receiver Jure Jenkins. I assume that's Jure. I don't know.
This is the big receiver move everybody's been talking about.
From LSU. There he is. What no. No, he's not. I think I'm actually kind of curious, like what I was looking at the wide receiver room the other day, and I was talking to some Des Fitzpatrick scored a touchdown on Thursday, and like Deuce Watts really looks like.
Yeah, he hasn't been brought it up all. Nick did talk about Des Fitzpatrick kind of getting lost in the shuffle when he probably shouldn't be at the bottom of the roster.
Deuce Watts looks jacked, man. Like I don't remember him looking that muscled up last year. He looks like he really put a lot of work in this offseason. I don't know where guy who was the number 3 wide receiver for LSU fits in that mix, but hey, I don't know. We'll see. Maybe some guys are banged up and they just want some bodies. That's certainly, or they know, that some vets, maybe George and Van and guys like that are not going to be around this week and they just want an extra body. That happens as well.
Yeah, that's probably it. But yeah, this doesn't preclude them from doing anything else at the receiver position. And Alan, we haven't talked about receivers enough on this show, I don't think. So we might as well talk about it again today. But a little bit of a added context to this conversation with Justin Jefferson's new deal coming in. Ooh, boy, $35 million per year, the highest most for a non-quarterback ever. $35 million per season, 110 of his $140 million fully guaranteed. Or I'm sorry, $88 million fully guaranteed, 110 guaranteed of the 140 million. And Alan, it kind of raises the question. So, we've talked about a lot about the idea of Brandon Aiyuk, who's not going to get that type of money, but like definitely going to be compensated pretty. Yeah. So like, is it even feasible for the Steelers to get in that territory? And I have kind of a follow-up question, but like first and foremost, just like on the surface, I guess let's have that conversation. Then I'll bring up something that Nick and I talked about earlier last week as well.
Well, yeah, I asked the question on Twitter, does this make it easier or harder for the Steelers to envision like getting Brandon Aiyuk? And like on one hand, I think it's a benefit, right? Like it makes it harder for the 49ers to sign him, clearly. Like I think this moves the price tag for Brandon Aiyuk up. He said he wanted more than Amon-Ra St. Brown. Great. They could have done $1 more than Amon-Ra St. Brown. This is, in terms of guaranteed money, $30 million more than Amon-Ra St. Brown. Like that's a huge gap. And so like, I don't know. I mean, Aiyuk had better numbers than Jefferson did last year. Obviously Jefferson had an injured quarterback, but it's not like Brock Purdy is, he ain't Peyton Manning, so I don't think Aiyuk should be willing to settle for a lot less than that. I think, somewhere in the neighborhood of 90 million guaranteed, I would be thinking to make that deal happen.
And that's now like you still got like it's going to be a race between whether it's the 49ers or somebody trading and then giving Aiyuk a new contract, Cincinnati with Jamar Chase, Dallas with CeeDee Lamb. Like, yeah. Well, yeah, see, I view T. Higgins a little bit differently. I feel like
he's not in that realm, but like it's still going to impact all these new deals always trickle down, right? And so Tyreek Hill's Drew Rosenhaus was on Pat McAfee saying he wants a new deal now after this. So I think it's going to make it so like I guess step one in the Steelers getting Brandon Aiyuk is the 49ers deciding they don't want him anymore. Right. And so I think this makes that step feel a lot more likely. I still think it makes more sense for the 49ers to just play the season out with him and let him walk into free agency than it does trade him for draft picks, unless the Steelers have something that the 49ers really want in terms of player assets. I don't know why they would care that much about the draft picks to go try to win the Super Bowl. But I do think it makes it more likely that things get contentious. Maybe they're very far apart in contract demands. Maybe he refuses to report to training camp. I don't know. That's the path that has to happen for this trade to happen. So I think that makes it more likely. But man, if you're the Steelers, like I understand the desire to have a player of that caliber. They made a lot of moves to try to win this season. Clearly, wide receiver is a weakness. It's hard to find an upgrade on what they've got in free agency. But I don't know about spending almost $100 million in guaranteed money on a wide receiver. This feels like the NFL market, and this it's not like this deal is out of line with the market, but it feels overpriced to me. This does not feel like good value to me. We're talking about a college football ecosystem that is putting out historic wide receiver classes seemingly year after year after year, and we're still valuing wide receiver this highly. I'm not quite sure it makes sense to be playing in this market outside of the Steelers' acute need for 2024. And so then I think you have to balance how much is the team really a contender to make that kind of deal worth it this year versus, hey, just go use a first-round draft pick on a wide receiver next year.
Yeah, I want to do some research on this actually, just because of like, you're right. It's kind of like the big three has kind of become a big four now with quarterback, left tackle, and then pass rusher. I think wide receiver is there now, with the way
I think it's a big two. I think it's quarterback, wide receiver.
Okay. That's and I think with the way that we're seeing them get paid, that's very fair. So again, like me wanting to do more research, I will say the other part of that is it's certainly a pass happy league, and I'm never going to knock guys for getting their money, but at the same time, bringing in what you are into the conversation, receivers out of the group of four that I just mentioned, and even if you want to bring it down to the group of two that you're talking about as a big two, receiver is the one that come in most pro ready out of that group, and you're getting production from right away. So like it's a balancing act for sure. I don't know. I think I'm kind of with you. I could see, especially with the way that the Steelers have built this team, I can't see them spending on that big on receiver. I think that, and we'll see. I want to actually bring in George to this conversation next, but I could see them looking for, contract efficiency through the draft at that position, and just them saying, we're going to pay at other positions. Receiver is constantly going to be one where we're kind of like recycle. Not to say that they're never going to pay a good player at the position, but like at the top of the position like that, kind of hard for me to get like align myself with that thinking for the Steelers.
Well, yeah, and like they have the money. It's not a question of whether they could do it. They could absolutely do it. I'm just not sure it feels smart. I don't know. You're talking about an astronomical amount of money. And then you have to consider whatever it's going to cost to acquire him from the 49ers. You're going to have to give them something, and probably something significant that goes on top of this massive market value contract. I don't know. It's starting to feel like, unless you really believe that there is more than like a 1% chance that the Steelers are going to win the Super Bowl this year with an addition of wide receiver, I don't see how it makes sense to do it. And I don't think they're anywhere close to that.
And I think too, the reason I said I want to bring George into this, at least with Aiyuk, and I think some of the other guys, it's still possible, but Aiyuk is basically saying that George isn't going to be a Steeler long term. Like if you're paying Aiyuk that contract, you're not going to turn around after the season and also give Pickens an extension, right?
I mean, not unless you somehow find good quarterback play that you don't have to pay. That's the other part of this, is like the Vikings are paying Justin Jefferson for 4 years while they're not going to be paying a quarterback big money. Like they've quite neatly planned this out where they're going to spend the money on Justin Jefferson now and then not spend the money on wide receiver later when they're hoping to have to sign their quarterback to a contract extension. The Steelers are cheap at quarterback right now. Like they need a big guy on a 1-year deal, which again goes all the way back to, I think it's fair to criticize the whole thought process of wide receiver. Where was that need at the beginning of free agency? They have the money. They easily could have spent $20 or $25 million on the top wide receiver in the league for 1 or 2 years. And I'm sure that one of those guys would have been fine with taking a 2-year deal, but they weren't even really interested in those guys. And now I don't know. Like it seems it's a very strange the way the process is played out. It doesn't seem to make a lot of sense. And I understand people saying like, hey, yeah, Deontay Johnson was traded because of his attitude or whatever, but like it's not like Deontay Johnson's attitude was suddenly a problem on March 13th or whatever. Like he wasn't causing problems then. This all started in November in Cincinnati. So I don't know how they got here, but I'm starting to become skeptical that even if a trade materialized for Brandon Aiyuk, and that the Steelers would want to pay the asking price plus that type of market value contract right now. Like I don't know.
I've moved on from the Aiyuk idea. Wow, that was kind of to be honest with you. Like I think honestly, the other San Fran receiver, Debo, I think more palatable, just because he's already under contract. Like now, you know, would things become contentious, would he be looking for some type of raise? And same thing with DK Metcalf. Like, so I don't know. Like, I know that it's kind of been shot down, the idea of them moving him, but I'd keep coming back to Courtland Sutton, just because, like, if the idea is for him looking for more guaranteed money than this year than like the $2 million guaranteed or whatever, and that you're talking about giving him some guaranteed money in 2025 as well, like a 2-year deal. And he said something about like 15 to 16 million was thrown out there. More than fine with me, because that's firmly wide receiver 2 money now. Like that people might think that that's egregious. I don't think so. I think that is completely fine for Courtland Sutton. And that's one to me that doesn't block a long-term future for George Pickens here if that materializes after the season.
And I think they're still very up in the air on whether they're going to want George Pickens long-term or not. Like, I mean, I think,
I'm saying Aiyuk closes the door on that, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. Unless it's just a 2-year deal. But I don't know. It doesn't seem like that's what.
Yeah.
I don't know what a Brandon Aiyuk wants. A 2-year deal would not, but man, that's paying an awful lot to only have a guy for 2 years. Like why would you do that? I don't know. They're in a tough situation. It seems like it's going to be very difficult at this point to upgrade the wide receiver room without taking a drastic step. And this drastic step, just I don't know, to me looks unrealistic at this point.
I still feel like they're going to do something. I just don't know what it is. I still feel like there's going to be a significant receiver addition at some point. And I don't know how we're going to get there, but I also don't know how we got here from the end of last season with the wide receiver room. So,
yeah, I mean, I think Sutton still remains a decent idea. Something like picking through the scraps of the Titans and the Texans and trying to find, someone like a Treylon Burks or someone like a, Noah Brown.
And John Mechie. Yeah. Like, and to me,
Mechie,
that's like, I mean, Noah Brown's a good player, but like, you know what he is. Burks and Mechie are more of like dart throws. Like I can't sit here and firmly say, oh, that is definitely an upgrade to this wide receiver room. You're hoping that it is, but
yeah.
It's
certainly not a sure thing.
Yeah. I don't know. Anything else on this, Alan?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I think we pretty well covered my thoughts there.
Yeah. And again, we're talking about the Steelers and their search for wide receiver. I'm sure that this will pop up again in the very near future. We could see, who knows, as early as tomorrow, another wide receiver sign a deal, not for more than Justin Jefferson, but again, see how that maybe shapes the market here for these guys underneath him. So
I would, if I'm an NFL team, I would not be trying to pay. Yeah. Like if you're Dallas, do you really want CeeDee Lamb that much more than you want Dak Prescott? I don't know. Like this is tough. Like there are a lot more college wide receivers than there are college quarterbacks.
Sure.
That I want to play. Like, I mean, I don't know. It's difficult. Like
we'll see. And if every NFL team were like in that mindset, the market wouldn't have exploded like this.
Yeah. Yeah, it doesn't make. It's another thing that doesn't make sense to me. I don't understand why, in the midst of a historic talent rush at the position, the salaries at the top are more than they've ever been. It doesn't really add up to me. I can't quite figure it out.
That's why
it would seem like they should be less valuable, but they're not.
Yeah, I got to dive into this and see. We got some stuff from YouTube that we want to get to. Our guy Thomas Brocious has a question for you, but I actually saw a little bit ago. He also commented that he appreciates seeing. I have a tattoo on the outside of one of my hands that says patience. So it's just a nice reminder for him every day to have patience. Thomas, I also have gratitude on the other hand, two things that are very important to me. So that's what those are for. So I appreciate that. We appreciate your questions as always. Saw the Bears will be on Hard Knocks, so the Steelers avoided again. It's coming up eventually. Do you think that you would have to do your job differently if the Steelers were to be featured on Hard Knocks, Alan?
It is not coming up eventually. There's no rule that says they have to do it. You just have to avoid 2 consecutive years of missing the playoffs, and you can avoid Hard Knocks forever. And I know the Rooneys do not want to be on it. So if they can avoid it, they are going to avoid it.
Don't you think that the league, I mean, though, like if the Steelers were to be eligible, like couldn't say no, don't you think that they would be a prime selection for the league to choose, though?
Like in a vacuum, sure, but I don't think they would. I think they would find a way out of it. I really don't think they want to do it.
Money talks, huh? Is that maybe the Rooneys are sliding them some bills to say, hey, don't pick us?
No, I mean, I think when you pick your battles, right? And I think that's one they've picked and one they're pretty dead set against.
I mean, because I'm
I
kind
don't
of in
think
the
it would
mindset.
change the way I do my job on a day-to-day basis. It would just be more work. Because then I would have to write about what happened on TV in addition to what I saw at practice. But I don't really think
parking spaces might be a little bit more.
The parking situation, which is already a disaster, would certainly get worse. But yeah.
I've been of the mindset similarly to Thomas here, and you're right. I mean, the Rooneys have quite a bit of pull in the league, so maybe they wouldn't even put them in that position. But I've just been of the mindset if they are available to pick, I just feel like they would for that. Like, how often are you going to have a chance to get the Steelers on Hard Knocks? So if they miss the playoffs back-to-back years, I felt like the league would just pounce on that. But honestly, it hadn't come to my mind that the Steelers really don't want it to happen that much. And if they have the ability to not be on it, they're not going to be on it.
Yeah, and they have missed they did miss the playoffs in consecutive years in 18 and 19. And they avoided getting on it somehow. So, I'd be surprised if it ever
other
happened.
Criteria with it. It can't be like a new head coach, right? Or something like that.
Yeah, that's another one.
What if the Steelers were they thought that they were a threat to be selected, so they were like, you know what, we're moving on from Mike Tomlin just to make sure that we're not going to be on Hard Knocks.
Yeah, I don't know about that. I don't know about that.
I don't know. I don't know what all goes into that, but that's an interesting question. We certainly, I don't think we're asked anything about how your job would be differently if the Hard Knocks folks were in the building. Yeah, anything else to add on that?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. I like this question. Well, I guess maybe more of a comment, but you can comment on this as well, because Nick and I spent a lot of time on Friday's episode talking about Keanu Benton, a player that maybe we haven't touched on a whole lot, but certainly very important. I mean, when you look at the defensive line, not only now, but for the future. I mean, if you're talking about for the future, really, to me, the only long-term piece currently on that defensive line. And RuneScape God said, Benton really reminds me a mix of Tuitt and Hargrave. And of course, that's awesome. I'd like to see him rock more at 3 tech this year and stick Mont Adams or Fehoko at nose more often than not.
Yeah. So Steelers usually play. God, do I want to get into the weeds of what 3 tech means? The Steelers usually play. Yes, that's a yes.
Yes.
So in base defense, the Steelers are playing a nose tackle, which is generally 0 tech. So that means directly over the center. Sometimes they'll play with a tilt nose, which means you're like a 1 tech, in that gap between the center and the guard. And then, the ends in the base defense play traditionally we're 5 tech straight up on the tackle. Now, generally they play more 4-eye, so inside the tackle guard gap. But I think, yes, that Keanu Benton is more than just a nose tackle. And then they get into the 3 tech when they play in that sub package. So if I'm the Steelers and I'm making my plans for the defensive line right now, I think in the base defense, I think that Keanu Benton is one of their best 3 defensive linemen, and I want him playing nose tackle in the base defense. but in the sub packages, like he should be second or third in the rotation. Like Hayward, Ogunjobi, sure those guys are going to play a lot, but like Keanu Benton needs to be playing almost as much at that 3-tech, that defensive tackle in the 4-man front that is their sub package. Yeah, he's going to play there a lot. And it would not totally surprise me if we see him play some end. And because if I think of those 3 guys as my first 3 defensive linemen, I think Mont Adams is the 4th, and Mont Adams is is best at nose tackle. So if let's say Cam's not playing, or let's say Cam, taps out, he's got to come out for a play, and you put Mont Adams in, I would be wanting to move Benton to the edge, not to the edge, but to end, and play Adams at the nose. Fehoko, I mean, we saw how little they valued his contributions last year. I don't know how, he could feel like he's even going to, a chance to make the team. They added what was really a deep and difficult to cut defensive line room last year. They lost one guy, Armand Watts. They bring in Dean Lowry. By the way, Dean Lowry, awesome dude. And they added Logan Lee in the 6th round. So, man, it's even harder for Fehoko to make the team this year. I mean, obviously, Lee is not really competing with Fehoko. He's a pure 5-tech. Fajoko's a pure nose. But, I mean, I think 2 of those guys are headed to the practice squad. And so, going to be tough. We'll see how it plays out. But, yeah, I think their first 4 if you're rolling out 2 lines of sub package D, it's real easy. It's Cam, Larry, it's Adams and Benton, and those are and then you got Lowry, and then you got Isaiah Loudermilk. And to me, those 6 guys are the guys on the 2 deep at defensive line right now. And I think it's pretty hard for me to see that order changing. Certainly guys like DeMarvin Leal have the talent to do it, but that's the way I'd line them up right now.
I was going to say, as you were going through there, doesn't sound great for DeMarvin Leal's, prospects.
I just don't. I mean, he's a very good player. He could find a way into that rotation. It's not like he couldn't pass a Dean Lowry or pass Loudermilk, but he certainly wasn't there at the end of last season. And without, it's not like Larry's doing a lot, even though he's been around, and Cam's not been around at all. So it's really hard to say where things are in the pecking order right now, but we'll see when we get to training camp. But I think he's looking like the number 7 defensive lineman, and maybe at best. So we'll see.
Yeah. This was interesting too, and this parlayed off a conversation going back to the news of the Steelers not extending James Daniels this offseason. There's a conversation back and forth on YouTube, but David jumped in here and said, from last year's performance, Daniels was our best offensive lineman, no doubt, but chuckled when you brought up the topic in your next podcast saying McCormick is a 4th-round pick and there's no way the team would trade Daniels and start a rookie day 3 pick. Team did it with more left tackle, by far more challenging position to start as a rookie. You and I agree 98% of the time. No disrespect at all to you, Alan, but I'd start building continuity with the young guys and let Daniels get his big payday a year earlier by making the trade. Lots of teams in need of high-quality IOL like James Daniels, and I don't want him playing in fear of getting hurt now that he knows his tenure will expire after the season. McCormick is a full-grown man with more than 4 years of college starting experience. He's as ready as Moore was when he came in.
Well, I mean, there's a lot there that I'm going to disagree with. First of all, the Steelers did not plan for Dan Moore to start. The idea was that Zach Banner was going to come back and start at right tackle, and Chooks was going to start at left tackle. And it wasn't until Zach Banner aggravated his knee injury that plan fell apart, and Dan Moore had to start. They flipped Chooks back to right tackle because they wanted to play more where he was more comfortable having played in college. And I think, even though I said on Twitter today that I think people are going to be surprised that Dan Moore will be pretty sought after in the free agent market, I don't know how you could call that process a success. It just has not been. He has not been a very good starting tackle. You don't peg 4th rounders as starters. And so, I mean, the idea that the Steelers might move on from, look, if Mason McCormick comes in and looks really good and passes Nate Herbig as the backup during this season and gets some reps and looks like he can handle those reps, sure. But right now, there is no thought whatsoever to him being the starter in 2025. It's just not You're hoping to get a backup with a 4th round pick. You are not penciling someone in as a starter. And that's not to say that he can't be, but that's just teams dealing in reality. Like, that is not what you're hoping to get from a 4th round player.
Well, yeah. And 2, you're talking about a year of McCormick being in the league and being hopeful. Like, this conversation that they were having was about trading Daniels and Mason McCormick starting right now.
I mean, just if they traded Daniels, Mason McCormick would not start right now. Like,
Nate
Herbig would start right now if they traded Daniels. And I would not say it's any sure thing that Mason McCormick would pass Nate Herbig at any point this year. Yeah, he's a grown man and an older prospect, but he's playing at South Dakota State. Like, this is not, I mean, we've seen 1st round picks from the FCS level bust horrendously, let alone 4th rounders. Like, you know, you're not, there's no such thing as a sure thing in the NFL draft. But when you're talking about a 4th rounder from an FCS school, yeah, I mean, you're going to have to see something significant before you make a move like that. It's just not even remotely within the realm of plausibility that they're going to move on from James Daniels. And the fact that he's going to play out the last season of contract like that would bother him or matter till I get, it's not, it's part of the game, man. There's going to be 10, 12, 15 guys that are going to play out the last year of their contract this year on this team, and are going to play significant playing time while doing it. Like, it is just a part of the game.
That is always interesting to me. Like, what, like, upcoming free agents, people are like, oh, we should trade to get something, and like the other ones aren't even brought up. Like, imagine if that was just a thought with every pending free agent after the season, was just trade all of them before we lose them for nothing.
Yeah,
like, and how the football team would look. You're
going to turn over 20% of your roster. Even forget your roster, 20% of the guys who play every year. Like, that's just how the way the NFL works. I mean, most of these guys are not going to be, not most, but a significant portion of these guys are not going to be here next year, and they know it. And it's not. You think DeMonte KZ is worried about his contract? How about Landon Roberts? How about I could name a dozen guys that are entering the last year of their deal that how about Nate Herbig? There's a number of those guys that playing out the last year of your contract is not unusual or something that needs to be dealt with. It just is what it is. And so I mean, how many times have we seen Terrell Edmonds did it? Juju did it twice. It's not a big deal.
Yeah, I don't want to turn a complete blind eye and act like I'm, not taking consideration what they're saying, because I think part of it too would obviously be the caliber of player, like acknowledging that James Daniels is very good, probably going to make a lot of money, and assuming that the Steelers aren't going to pay that. So get something for him as opposed to letting him go for nothing with a lot of the guys we're talking about. You're probably not worried about getting anything for, because the return wouldn't be that great. They're not going to make that much money, or you feel like the Steelers, because of that, a good chance to re-sign.
Yeah, but I mean, we just talked about how this team's whole offseason has been about win now mode. What are you going to get for James Daniels that's going to help you this year? Nothing. I mean, you're going to get a 4th round pick. So maybe a third, maybe a third, a third with something going back the other way. But that's not worth having compared to having James Daniels this year if you're a team that's dead set on trying to win a playoff game. I feel like this is there's the spectrum, right? There's the people over here who are the Steelers are going to win the Super Bowl if they trade for Brandon Aiyuk. And then there's the people who are this team is so hopeless that they should trade James Daniels for a 3rd round pick because they're not going anywhere this year. It doesn't matter. Just put the young offensive linemen together now and let's play for the future. I feel like we have contained the whole multitude there.
Yeah.
You have to be pretty hopeless on this year's outlook to want to trade James Daniels, because you're not getting anything that's going to help you this year for him.
I guess if you have to throw me into one of those buckets, it's the Aiyuk one, but I'd say I'm probably more in the middle.
Yeah. I think everybody pretty much is somewhere in the middle there.
Don't get me wrong. I want to preface by saying, people will normally start out by saying totally unbiased. I want this to be known. This is very much biased. But if they got Brandon Aiyuk, I'm placing a large bet on the Steelers to win the AFC North.
I like the Steelers' odds to win the AFC North. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but I like compared to the odds, I like betting on the Steelers more than I think just about anybody else.
Yeah.
I think the Steelers have a better chance of winning the division than the Browns do, even though they have worse odds. And you can bet on one of the two teams that are almost favorites, but I don't think either one of them is much more likely to win than the other, and you're not getting big juice on betting for either of them. So if I'm betting to win the AFC North, I'm betting the Steelers.
Was the last division title 2020 COVID year?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So they're due. John,
and I would bet, and you can't bet this, or at least I haven't seen a legal place that you can bet this, but I would bet a fortune that they're not going to come in last place. I just, even though that's what they're favored to finish, I just can't. It's not going to happen.
Yeah. There you go. There's some betting advice. Tuca Peter Martana, if you're listening, there you go. Bet the Steelers do not come in last in the AFC North. Last one I want to get to here, John Goodbread, not just because he continues to give us compliments and he's absolutely all about, not only does he want shirts, he wants stickers, he wants hats, he wants it all. Actually, he sent me some mock-ups that I got to send you. He DM'd me some mock-ups that he likes the look of for sure. They do look cool if we can bring them to life. He also he threw in a joke here. You mentioned on the last show that you were on, this is the time of year that minor celebrities start popping up. So he said one of these days I'm just going to walk into the picture as well because I'm a minor celebrity. But he did also have an actual question along with this. Hey, Alan, based on your eyes at OTAs, compare the dynamics between the two league QBs and the receivers, not just pattern, timing, synergy, team, personal synergy too. So kind of all of it. What have the vibes been like between the QBs and the receivers?
It doesn't seem like there's a big difference. I think that Russ seems to have more of a, I don't know if it's the right way to put this, but like say in the offense. It sure seems like I see him talking to Arthur Smith a lot, and in terms of like what they're doing, but I think I don't think there's a big difference just in terms of I think Wilson is just as a player, and this isn't necessarily in the fit with the Steelers, but he just has better touch and feel. Like I think he kind of is a better feel quarterback in terms of just like knowing where a guy is going to be, maybe seeing a guy without really seeing him, and putting the ball in his hands. But I mean, Fields is a super impressive athlete, so I don't really think there's been a big difference. I think for whatever reason, and we've talked about this a lot, but this competition's going to be close. Like I don't see a big difference between these players right now.
Yeah, and to me, I think I brought this up on here before, but I thought like this time of year between OTAs and mini camp ahead of training camp would be where people kind of gravitated more towards Fields because he's like more physically impressive and there's less like at least information on Twitter about the drills that are going on, right? Like the 7 shots, all that stuff. So we like performance wise, it's harder to gauge how the quarterbacks look. So like physically,
well, I can't talk about like specifics, but I'll say that the defense has been spanking the offense in general.
I would expect that to be the case. Yeah. But like training camp, when we see all this stuff, like everybody's watching live as you guys are live tweeting through the training camp practices and stuff, and like actually being able to gauge quarterback performance, that's maybe where we would see if it's going to happen, people start to swing back towards Russ. But like now where it's football and shorts, I just feel like the more physically impressive dude in Justin Fields is kind of the one that like fans are all behind right now.
Yeah. I don't know. I feel I'm not sure that is there a consensus among the fan base as like who people want to be the starting quarterback? I'm not sure I really feel that.
Not to say that I have the biggest, feel. I don't have my hand on the pulse of everybody, but like at least people within like my circle, the group of people that I conversate with regularly, it's Justin Fields. Just because I think that, and I'm not saying throw this year away, like we just had that conversation about them being in on this year and stuff. But if there is a long-term solution on the roster quarterback right now, it's Justin Fields. So I think it's more about that than anything else.
I think you can make a good argument that they should have kind of thrown this year away and tried to play for 2025, but they didn't. And so now you have to like now you kind of have to play within the path that you started down, right? Like you can't change gears now. Otherwise, a lot of the things you did are real stupid. So,
well, what you just said is basically what Joe Aber brought up to us a couple weeks ago, where it was like, shouldn't this year be about finding just more, balance on the offense and stuff like that, getting ready for having maybe improved quarterback play in 2025 and having an environment for them to come into and succeed right away?
You could say that, but they've seemingly, dedicated themselves to winning a playoff game this year and trying to do everything they can to do that. So I don't know. We'll see how it goes. I'm skeptical about the wide receiver position being satisfactorily resolved. And we'll see what the heck happens at quarterback. But I think it's I don't know. I think you can look. I think Omar Khan has done a really nice job as general manager, but I think there's a lot this offseason right now that looks like has left them open to criticism if things don't go very well.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's fair. Starting number one with wide receiver, but I feel like we haven't talked about it as much lately, but still slot cornerback, they got to be a bit uneasy about
the whole quarterback situation. There was a lot of different things they could have done at quarterback. They picked one that no one's ever done before with no idea if this is going to work. So, find some good quarterback play and find it sooner rather than later. And I think all will be forgiven. But if that doesn't happen, this process isn't going to look so good in hindsight.
I mean, imagine if they do, if Russ just comes out and lights it up this year, is, top 10 in pretty much every quarterback metric. They go on to have a really good season, do win a playoff game. Interesting conversation for the offseason with what do you do now with Russ's contract, but also to get that type of play on what they were paying him. I mean, what a market efficiency that is.
But again, what? Okay, so what if they go out there and Russ is awesome and just dotting up everybody, and Quez Watkins has 12 drops and Van Jefferson gets hurt again, and they go into the playoffs and everybody's just double teaming George Pickens. Even in one of the better scenarios, there's still a lot of question marks. I don't think this team is that close to winning a Super Bowl, but I do think they've put themselves in position where you can sort of more clearly envision them winning a playoff game. So that's why I do think that that's really what this team was put together to do. I think they're trying to win a playoff game. And when you look at the focus on the offensive line, the running game, how good this defense could be, yeah, I feel better about their chances of going into Kansas City or Buffalo or Cincinnati or Baltimore and winning in January. I do. I just don't know.
They kind of already answered my final thing.
I just don't think they're so close to a Super Bowl that trading for Brandon Aiyuk makes any sense.
Okay. I was going to ask, I feel like you answered it. Would the 2024 Steelers beat the 2023 Steelers?
Yeah, I think so. I think they're a better team.
I think so too. I don't know that it's going to show in their record.
Yeah, right. The 2023 Steelers are not on the schedule, and very few teams that are worse are. So good luck with that.
All right. Well, good conversation. As always, Alan, tell the people they can find you.
At @Saunders_PGH, PGH Steelers Now, SteelersNow.com. Like and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Hit the bell for notifications. Got lots more coming here at the last week of OTAs. Starting, Steelers were at Kennywood today. No practice, so they'll be back on the field at UPMC tomorrow for the last week of OTAs.
Is it just Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, or they've
Friday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. So they skipped practice today.
Okay. Oh, so it would have been today through Thursday.
So today was OTA 7.
Okay.
Gotcha. Roller coasters,
There we go. I wonder how that. I mean, really, all we can see is the Instagram stuff, but we need some notes from some of the players their Kennywood experience. That's a task for you for tomorrow. I want to know about how first trip to Kennywood was for them. Subscribe, and hit that notification bell if
Justin
you are
Fields'
on YouTube.
face in the picture is making me want to go to him first. That's where I'm starting this task.
I mean, Mason McCormick's face was pretty good. I mean, Zach Frazier, all of them, really, their first time.
I feel like Zach Frazier has to have been to Kennywood before, so I don't that. I don't want to go there.
Honestly, he was probably leading them around. He was probably we gotta do this, we gotta do this. got a hit potato patch over here and knew exactly where it was.
Yeah.
I would guess so.
How much potato patch do you think those guys put away?
Oh, man, I don't know. How many? There were a lot of those boys are trenches guys too, so that were there. Yeah, I'm guessing a lot.
That's a lot of fries.
Yeah. All right. Well, anyway, and if you are listening somewhere, Apple, Spotify, wherever your podcast from, you can find us there. Steelers Afternoon Drive. Just type it in. Once you find us, subscribe, leave us a 5-star review over there as well. You can find me everywhere, Zachary Smith, PGH. Be sure to leave us comments, ask us questions, let us know what you thought about the episode. So next time, for Alan Saunders and myself, thanks for jumping in and taking another ride on the Steelers Afternoon Drive.